Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to do that earlier, but we're doing
That's
it.
all right. No, I grew up playing these parks. My interest has always been in parks, and so serving on this commission is kind of synergetic. It fulfills, I think, a great need for the community. And for the most part, it's really a quality of life issue. It allows people to go out and get outside and enjoy kind of some of the natural things that we should take advantage of in the city. Like I was saying, obviously everybody knows the last year has been challenging. However, we have been able to make significant progress on city parks, and so it's really exciting. They didn't just sit for the last year and wait for the pandemic to end. They're actually pretty active in terms of finishing parks, planning new parks, discussing and working on a Proposition 68 grant for improvements of the marina, specifically the fishing pier and ferry point. So all those things are exciting, and all of them take time and all of them take a lot of work. But we've had great community input, great community interest. And so with that, I'll get right into it. The first thing that we've done in the last year, in fact, they were just completed, is we've completed 4 Measure H park projects. I think the punch list is complete for Golden Hills, but also we've completed Highland Park, John Muir Park, and Sparacino Park. Golden Hills Park was probably the last of the significant Measure H remodels. Golden Hills Park is out in Virginia Hills. It's kind of, I wouldn't say in the periphery of the city, but it's certainly in a location outside of the downtown. I know that some of the residents who live out there were not excited about the fact that it was one of the last ones to go. However, that had to do with kind of the way funding worked, not that we are less interested in people who live in Virginia Hills versus people who live downtown. It's an exciting project. And one of the things that, well, as all Measure H projects did, and was actually a specific requirement of Measure H, and really kind of the driving force behind Measure H, was to make all parks in the city ADA compliant. And so the first thing that we did for Golden Hills was to make sure all the pathways, play structures, parking lots were ADA compliant, with improved lights, improved slopes and grades. But we also did some other things out there. As we looked at this park, we kind of reconfigured it in terms of what made more sense. The existing park had a older restroom, community room, and as part of our remodel, we didn't want to take amenities that existed away. And so one of the things we did is we included a new restroom and community room, but we located it actually a little bit closer to some of the parking lots in order to make it more accessible. We also we resurfaced the basketball courts and the tennis courts. We did some improvements to the playing turf, the turf field that's up there. It's usually used for youth soccer. And then we also included some playground equipment, and we improved the barbecue and picnic areas. So when you actually walk into the park now, it looks like a new park as well as it should. Mark, I believe we have some photographs of the park. The first photographs were taken just before completion of the project, and the second series, which we'll show, is of the completed park. So this right here is the new restroom and community room building. And you can see here that it's still boarded up because it's not quite complete. Those obviously have now been removed. But if you scroll down, there's a couple more pictures. This again is a little bit further back. It shows the building again, but also the basketball court, which is a half court, which has also been kind of reconfigured and updated in order to make it more playable. I think there's another picture Past that.
Okay. Yeah.
This is the new picnic areas, one of the new picnic areas that we've put in. And you can see there's still some construction cones because there's still some work going on. This project was actually delayed a little bit due to disputes with the contractor and then some other ongoing issues, but those were ultimately all resolved and it's now been finished. There's another photograph below. And this is the play structure that's there currently, and then also a swing set. And again, you can see that's a new picnic bench. There's a carve out in order to accommodate, to actually make it a picnic area instead of just a bench. And then again, those are the new pathways that are now ADA compliant. And is that the last one in this series?
Yes.
Okay. If you can go to the next series of photographs, that actually shows part of the project that has now been completed again. So here we go. We have the Golden Hills sign. I've got this. So in the completed now restroom, community room area, this is the basketball court that has been resurfaced. You can see the new flagstone sign. Here's the basketball court, which looks great. And again, play structure with picnic bench or picnic table right on the pathway. And again, the ADA compliant pathways. And is that the last one in this series?
Yeah.
Okay. So that, like I said, this project was finished in April. The punch list was, I think, set to be complete last month. So it's been open for a couple months, but it is now officially complete. So, and it's turned out fantastic. So we couldn't be more thrilled about this. And we're hoping to have a ribbon cutting if we could all get together, but maybe a virtual ribbon cutting. I don't know. Maybe after the 15th, we can do that. The next finished park is Highland Park. This park is not well known, but it is down behind the courthouse up on the hill. It's a small, what they call a neighborhood park. Usually we've termed these neighborhood parks because there's no restroom facility and it's really kind of a smaller pocket park that the neighbors can use, but and anybody else can actually use it, but it's not well known. They're kind of tucked away and they're for kind of smaller crowds. But for this park, we did all the pathways to make sure everything's ADA compliant. We put in a new play structures. The other ones were out of date and potentially safety hazards as all these structures age. They come out of safety compliance. You can see we've resurfaced the basketball court. That basketball court used to be a full court, but because of a soils issue, we decided to turn it into a half court. But then with the part of the hillside that is stable, we put in a 4-square court. That is, well, I guess my daughter is older than elementary school and still enjoys playing it, but that is not as well known outside of the elementary junior high set, but that is a 4-square, kind of a very nice looking 4-square court. The other thing we've also done is we've improved some of the picnic areas and obviously the pathways. Again, this is another remodel, smaller in scope than the Golden Hills project, but this park also needed a real refresh, and this is a fantastic project. The next two projects was John Muir Park. I don't have photographs of this, but John Muir Park, to those unfamiliar with it, is a park that is right by John Muir Elementary School off of Vista. This park is essentially what we consider a passive park in that there's no real play structures there. But all of these parks needed to have improved pathways and improved lighting and improved picnic areas. And so while this wasn't a major remodel, because there's nothing really to remodel, certainly our project here was to improve and make ADA compliant all amenities that exist in the park. And that's what we did for John Muir Park. And the last one was Sparacino Park. Sparacino Park is over by the clerk recorder across the Alhambra Creek from the train station. This park, again, is more of a passive park. There's no real play structures or sports fields associated with it. But again, this also needed to make sure the pathways were ADA compliant. We improved and replaced the picnic benches. And so that was another project that we completed this last year. All these projects were bid together in order to promote an economy of scale, and they all came in on budget and under Measure H funding. So those are the projects that were all constructed and finished within the last year during COVID. So that was, things were happening, and that was something that we were really pleased about because we didn't want to continue to sit on these. We still have we've been discussing as a commission, and we've approved, and I believe council has approved a couple other new pending projects that also have funding sources. And these are part of our capital improvement projects that we've identified as high priorities. And we have funding allocated both through Measure H and through park in lieu fees. And these are more modest in scope. These are really to finish off projects that were initially encompassed in Measure H, but for one reason or another, they weren't included in the project when we first worked on the park. The first one and our highest priority is out at Hidden Lakes Park. Hidden Lakes Park was initially done as a Measure H project to include an artificial turf field, which cost over $1 million and allows for year-round use. We'd also included a new play structure right by the field. And that has turned out fantastic. And if you look at that, the most impressive thing to me was the city emblem in the middle of the soccer field. It's really pretty stark. But one of the things that we did not include in that project is a replacement of the bathrooms concession area, and then also the ADA pathways between the two softball, baseball fields that also exist on the opposite end of the park. So as we were looking at projects to finish, this is one that stood out pretty dramatically. And as we've gone back and we've looked at the restrooms, when we initially did the Hidden Lakes project, we thought that the bathrooms were probably sufficient. We weren't sure how much money we were going to have. And so we unfortunately skimped on that. And we basically said, well, we can probably rehab these and make them functional. And since that project was completed a couple of years ago, the bathrooms have fallen into worse shape, and the concession stand is pretty pitiful. And so as we're looking at our ending budget or how much money we have left over, we think this was our highest priority, to fix the bathrooms and make sure that all the pathways between the ball fields were ADA compliant. This project is set to go forward, I believe, at beginning of next spring, next construction season, 2022. It's got a price tag of about $600,000, $700,000. And we're excited about it because this finishes that park. This now means that every part of that park has been touched and improved through Measure H funding, which is really the whole point of Measure H. The next project that we are going to work on is, and these are not in a cycle, these are all being worked on, not consecutively, but together. is Susanna Street Park. If people who go down to Susanna Street Park, they look at the park. We did this as a Measure H project several years ago, which included improvement of pathways and picnic areas to make sure everything was ADA compliant. If you remember walking on those pathways, the roots had infiltrated a lot of the walkways, which created tripping hazards. And so that was all resolved by the initial Measure H project. That project also called for the inclusion of interpretive panels that were going to include some either historic information about the park or the city. And so we actually had placed the metal structures for the panels to go into. And then due to several reasons, the information was never included on the panels. So part of our new project is to finish off those panels. We're going to have our subcommittee, our cultural subcommittee, start discussing information that they want to include on those panels. And these are all going to be public meetings. And so if people have interest or desire or curiosity about what is being discussed and what is being contemplated in those panels, I encourage you to reach out to the city. We want that type of feedback. But it's always bothered me to walk through that park over the years and to see these blank metal posts with no information on it because the city kind of got frozen about what to include in them. And so we're now finally pushing this forward in order to finish the project, which is something that always bothers me when you have these unfinished parks. The final one that is funded and going forward is Cappy Ricks. Cappy Ricks Park was completed several years ago. As part of that park, again, it's pathway improvements. We resurfaced the tennis courts, we resurfaced the basketball courts, and we also improved the picnic areas. And then we also had included a tot lot, and the tot lot is pretty small in size. And over the years, as we've been watching how people use the park, the tot lot is underutilized, and we think a lot of it has to do with kind of the size of it. It's pretty modest, which I think is a nice way to put not very good. And so as we've recognized that the use isn't what it should be, we've decided as a commission that we should spend money improving the play structure down there in order to encourage the picnickers or the park users to use that amenity. And so we have funding for that. We've ballparked about $150,000 to place the existing play structure with something more substantial. So that will be going forward also. And so we're really excited about that. So those are the funded projects. And we have a couple unfunded projects that the PRMCC, which is our abbreviation of Park, Recreation, Marina, and Cultural Commission, has identified as priorities, but we don't really have a identified funding source yet. And the first one that we have identified as a priority is improvements to the waterfront ball field, Field 5, which is a baseball, softball field. The history of this project is that when we designed the waterfront park improvements, the ball fields within what we call the Clover, which is fields 1 through 4, softball, baseball, we would do the improvements there, and then we would wait till we had additional funding to do Field 5 and the soccer field. Part of the problem with doing that is that as fields 1 through 4 were rehabbed, Field 3 was turned into what we called a championship type field, and they put grass in the infield, which limited playability of it. Now that field can only be used for 14-year-old and up baseball exclusively. No softball, no youth baseball. It's just kind of the major league diamond. And so what that ends up doing is it ends up taking
That's backwards, but it's a 2-minute warning.
Oh, for the completion of, okay. So anyway, let me get on. So we've identified that Field 5 could actually accommodate the loss of use for Field 3. And so we've gone forward with that project. We look at Prop 68 per capita funding as a potential source, but that's going to take city council approval. So I want to go on to talk briefly about Ferry Point and the fishing pier improvements. We've been working on a Prop 68 grant, which is a competitive grant that will repair the structure for the fishing pier. We'll also redeck all the fishing pier and do some, thanks Mark. This is Ferry Point. This is the site plan for the improvements that are proposed. We have, and then if you look at the next one, it will show the improvements to, well, actually, if you see the dotted line here, the dotted box, that is the native garden. It's going to make all the pathways ADA compliant. It's going to improve, it's going to include exercise equipment, new benches, a bathroom down there, which is in dire need. And then it's going to fix the structure of the pier and redeck, re-rail the pier. And and this is all necessary because the city's identified that the structure of the pier is not sufficient anymore. And so the price tag comes in at about millions. And this project itself is about $6 million. It is subject to a Prop 68 competitive grant. We used about 6 community meetings in order to create this proposal that has now been put together into a grant and submitted to the state. And we should hear back by August as to whether or not that grant has been approved. Fingers crossed, this is a fantastic project. This is probably the next big project that is going to go forward for the city if it is approved. There's also the potential of a kayak launch. If this project is approved, the city has agreed to spend $50,000 upwards of to include a kayak launch pier off of what used to be the old fuel dock. So the one last thing I want to mention is that we had community meetings regarding the park at Pine Meadow. And Tim is going to talk a little bit further about this, but I've been privy to a site plan that indicates that what was the proposed park is now going to include some significant drainage basins on it. And this is alarming in itself. And I've talked to the city about it. And the city effectively told me that they can't discuss it due to ongoing litigation with the developer. So they can't tell me yes or no whether or not the site plan is in fact accurate. But it was subject to a public meeting regarding the creation of a facilities district previously. So I have every reason to believe that the site plan is accurate. And that's concerning to me because this is the first new park in the city in well over 20 years. What we're doing for Measure H is rehabbing existing parks. This would be the first new park. And to lose a significant amount of usable space due to or detention basins, I think is pretty concerning. And so I'll let Tim speak about what he knows on this issue. But from what I've seen, I'm alarmed. And it's we really need usable, playable spaces. And to use them as detention basins is really kind of a misuse of public parks. With that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hey, Dylan, thank you so much. That was very informative. Lots going on. You guys seem like you keep pretty busy and doing great work too. This is just good stuff to see.
Great. Thank you.
Quick question from Donald Pilata, Galaxy Tab. Is that Prop 68 plan for Ferry Point available on the city's website, Dylan?
You know, it is the information that and I can shoot you our staff reports, but I don't know whether or not there's a separate heading for Prop 68 grant. But our staff reports have pretty detailed lists of amenities to include, kind of the process that we used, the site plans that are available. So if that is of interest to you, I can certainly shoot you the staff reports. They're attached under our agendas for, I think the last one is either May or April. The staff reports are attached to our agendas through a hyperlink, which will kick you right over to, pretty detailed staff reports and site plans.
Yeah, that'd be a wonderful thing. What I'm actually after is a copy of what you had Mark Thompson put up on the screen.
Yeah, simply. that site plan is actually attached to our staff reports.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Dylan, I have a couple of questions about the community room at Golden Hills. What's the capacity, and can anyone who's a citizen of Martinez or a resident of Martinez access it?
Yes, so it's all through, although they have not been renting out facilities due to COVID, but the community rooms are available for rentals from both city and non-city residents. The price difference depends on whether or not you are a resident or not. I'm sorry? Oh.
Linda.
Yeah, so they are available to rent. I don't know what the capacity is. So that, yeah, it's. I do know they hold summer. The plan is to hold summer programs for the city, also like their summer campers for their youth daycare program. So I mean, it holds more than 7, 8. It's probably 20, 30 is what I would guess.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
I have a quick question, and I know we need to move on, Mark, but I just want to ask one question. Dylan, hi, Dylan, it's Dan Barrows. The Ferry Point project, and you talked about multi-millions of dollars going into it. Has there been any consideration of dealing with the social issues down there? We have a 5-year-old. I take him down there every now and then, and I'm worried, nervous. It's sketch for sure. Needles on the ground you see on social media a lot, those sorts of things. Has there been some discussion about, while we're pouring all these millions into it, that we're also going to make it a place that is safe and attractive for people to go and not turn into a very nice camp for the people we don't really care to have down there potentially?
Sure. While that has been a separate discussion that we've had with law enforcement and the city itself regarding patrolling and enforcement of, kind of users of the parks who are not, who are misusing the park. I don't think that there is a specific, task force set for this, but we talk about this frequently at our park and our PRMCC meetings, because we're all users of the parks too. We see this, and it is concerning, especially, and I realized during the pandemic, they decided to use the amphitheater as kind of a homeless area. But it's, when I've discussed this with the city, a lot of them kind of throw up their hands. It's like, well, what are we supposed to do about it? And that's not really a great answer. I understand that. And that's not an answer that we accept, but if that's been kind of the response, or where do we put these people if we don't have them, if we don't kind of let them stay in the amphitheater? They've been attempting to move people out of the parking lot areas by Ferry Point. But again, that's sporadic. I go down there myself. I see it. So.
Okay. Well, it's certainly a a dilemma, and I'd hate to see a bunch of money poured into that and then it not really be usable for most people, you know. So they did approve Measure X money and said it was going to be for dealing with the homeless problem, was one of the many things listed. So hopefully it will be. Thanks.